Our friend Pete over at Summer Pops once said to me, quote, when school leaders are able to gather as a community and freely discuss issues and strategies, it can only have a positive impact on maintaining successful schools. And Will, I love watching schools succeed, end quote. You know, Summer Pops Math Workbooks sells thousands of workbooks every year. That's thousands of students returning to the classroom every fall, better prepared and more confident in their math skills. And Pete wanted to reach out and ask you, this leadership community, to help raise that number to tens of thousands of students a year. I have seen the Summer Pops workbooks, and they are worth a look. And it's a free look. If you're interested in summer math workbooks or you're just curious, visit summerpopsworkbooks.com and request your free samples today. Principal Matters Podcast, episode 364. Hi, friends. This is Will Parker, host of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast, where each week we bring you inspiring, innovative, and imaginative ideas for your own school leadership. I'm back this week with my co-host, Jen Schwanke, author, leader from Dublin City Schools. Jen, how are you? It's good to see you again.
It's always good to see you, Will, and I'm in a good mood, and you are in a good mood. We're going to have a great episode.
I think we are. We're going to talk about this week, not missing out on your best kept secrets. And I just want to tell folks on the front end, for longtime listeners, you know I'm a storyteller. And anyone who may be discovering this show, I can either welcome you to listen to my stories or ask your forgiveness for how rambling I can become. But I asked Jen today, Jen, can I have permission to start with a story? And I want to use the story as a platform for application to our work. So Jen, is it okay if I just jump right in?
Jump in. Let's do it.
So this past summer, my son Jack and we headed out to the panhandle of Oklahoma for some dad and son time. And I love summers because it finally gives you a chance to get away. And for the last couple of years, Jack has been asking to go to a part of the state called the Black Mesa area, where Oklahoma has its highest point. It's like, and this is a very flat state, so our highest point is 4,731 feet above sea level. But in the panhandle, if you've never been there before, you were talking, open sky, prairie lands. It's a pretty monotonous landscape. And so I have to admit, I was not excited about traveling out to the prairie with Jack, but I love my son, and this was something he wanted to do. And I looked online and we found a place to stay, a bed and breakfast that was literally 40 or 50 miles from any town. And so when we got out to that area, I was overwhelmed with its beauty. The Black Mesa Prairie Reserve has 1,700 acres of land, and you really do feel like you walked back into a Western cowboy movie. And so the first full morning we were there, we did a long hike. It was about 4 miles to get to this place that's considered the highest point. And the family that we stayed with, the rancher who's lived there his entire life, told me, when you get to the highest point, don't stop. Just keep walking to the western edge of that summit, and you'll be really surprised. So Jack and I made our way up this area, and this area is like full of these mountains that are like buttes, where the tops are flat, and then the valleys are just full of tall grass. And as we walked up this area, it was just so beautiful. The whole area was just humming with sound, songbirds and grasshoppers. But when we get to the top of this summit, we decided to keep on walking, and it took us about 1,200 more feet to get to the western edge of the summit. And suddenly we were just overwhelmed with this panoramic view of this long green valley. And when I mean long green valley, I'm talking about, imagine below you this sea of green, and the bushes and cedars are just tiny little dots. And the fences are ribboning, along these dusty filled roads. And if you see cows, they're so far away, they look like ants crawling on this green canvas. And the sky was just a brilliant blue, and the wind was just gusting. And we finally had to we got in some rocks and we laid down just to escape the wind for a while. And it was, Jen, it was just a moment I'm never going to forget. But as we were walking back, I was just reminding Jack that one of the most important things to do, especially when you're walking an area that's so open and it doesn't have majestic mountains or huge lakes, is to don't forget to look down, and be aware of your surroundings. And as we were walking that trail together, I noticed Jack's ability to just stop and pause and look. And so I wanted to start there because when I think about our work as educators, and I'm writing these thoughts as people are just right in the middle of school, we know that an average school year consists of anywhere between 175 or 190 days, depending on where you live and how much time you have with staff. Or if you're a 10-month employee or a 12-month employee, we know the seasons that mark the start and ends of our terms. We know that sometime this year, someone's going to want to retire or resign, or we're going to have to post a job. We know that we're going to have to reserve space in our calendars for end of semester ceremonies and activities. We know these things, but the question is, as we're traveling this journey of expected events that we already can anticipate are happening, are we being careful to, and I'm going to put these in categories, are we being careful to walk the land we've been given, to look down at the things that are right in front of us, to observe the patterns that are happening around us so that we can really be in the moment of our service? So, Jen, I know that's Will telling a story and trying to make an application here that may or may not work, but I wanted to start there because I would like to just ask you to reflect with me on how does that actually look in our work? How can we not miss out on the best kept secrets that are also in our schools?
Right. And I love that story. I think the part that stuck out to me too was when you had to get away from the wind. I think there's some profound symbolism there too. Like there's times that you need to duck and take stock of what's wearing you down, what's exhausting you, and so on. So there's that piece too. So let's dive into some of the questions for reflection that you put along with this. So do you want to read?
Yeah, I
Okay,
will. So I want to ask you, when you think about the landscape of your school and you're walking that landscape, when are you walking the landscape of your school, looking at it from the eyes of your students? And I'll give you an example. If I'm stepping into a commons area, am I looking just across the faces of students because I'm trying to monitor safety? Or am I searching for someone who maybe is sitting alone and needs connection? And so let's go there first, Jen. What are some ways that we can be watching and looking at our school from the eyes of our kids?
I think this is a really important skill to develop. I don't think it necessarily comes naturally, but you have to take off your principal lens or your teacher's lens and put on a student lens. And so I always think about the 18 million hours I spent at lunch duty over the course of my career, looking for the kid sitting alone, but also maybe looking at the table that's if you were looking as a principal, you might see, oh, they're getting a little too feisty. I better go tell them to quiet down. Well, why? What is it that's bringing the excitement or the energy or the moment where they might bully somebody, or what is it that it feels like? And how can you, as a principal or a teacher in that moment, as you reflect on that landscape, how can you make a connection? Might be a simple smile, might be a shoulder squeeze, might be a high five, might be a, hey, tell me what you all are thinking right now. It might be a moment to make a really important connection as you look across that landscape.
I agree. So let's take this to another setting. How are you stepping into the middle of any kind of student group? It could be a classroom, it could be a hallway jammed with kids, it could be the middle of an assembly. But stepping into it with the perspective of what can I discover about my kids while I'm in the middle of this?
Right. And tell me that I'm going to toss this one back to you because I have a thought, but it's not fully formed. When all of your years at a high school, tell me about those moments and when you stepped into a space jammed with students. What are some things? I don't want our listeners to say, okay, that sounds nice, but what am I looking for?
Yeah. Well, let me be specific.
Yeah.
And I love that question, Jen. Gosh, okay. Before I answer the question, I have to tell a story. So when I was in college, I had a scholarship as a resident advisor. And one of the responsibilities we had for the scholarship was we were supposed to and this was kind of silly, but it taught me some skills. We had to submit a weekly report based on the area of the campus that we were responsible for. And part of that report was to identify anything going on in the buildings or the atmosphere that needed repairs, or maybe something that was being missed by landscaping or whatever. And it was just a way I'm sure, for us to have some accountability for receiving these scholarships. But what it did for me was it made me actually walk around differently. I wasn't just on my way to class now. I was actually on my way to class looking for ways to improve what I was seeing on my way to class. And I think about that same thing when I'm walking into groups of kids and into the school setting. What are you looking for? And so I'll give you some examples. Perhaps you're looking for the faces of kids that you saw the night before in activities that you could tell them good job in that game. Or maybe you're also looking for the faces of kids who you can identify might be in distress and might need someone who can just stop them for a second and ask, hey, are you doing okay? Or is everything all right today? Or maybe you are listening in and you hear a conversation of something that really raises a red flag for you. And that happens. So you can be walking right in the middle of hundreds of kids and you can hear a comment or a conversation happening between two people that you're like, ooh, red flag. Somebody's in danger, somebody's threatening, or somebody's concerned. And then that gives you an opportunity when you're back to your office to maybe pull in some conversations or alert a counselor or a teacher leader or someone else, or have a conversation with the parent. And so listening for those conversations, looking for the faces of kids, it's not simply a matter of getting from point A to point B. It's a matter of being in the landscape of your school and looking for those things that alert you to what's happening with your kids and with your community.
Right. And you might find a question that will start a conversation that seems really innocuous, but it's helpful. I used to walk up to kids and say, hey, you look stressed out. Is there something going on? And they might say, no, I'm fine. Or they might say, oh my gosh, yes. Because, stress is a term that we all use.
Yeah.
And so it can be a quick door opener. So,
and I want to give an example of a principal I saw do this the other day, Jen, because I was walking a school with an elementary principal. And well, actually, it was a K-8 school. And so she was walking down the hallway when a group of maybe sixth graders came by. And there was a boy, and I heard her, I saw her watching, and I heard her say to him his name. And she said to him, hey, what kind of day are you having? And she held her thumb up like this. And he did his thumb down and sideways, like down and sideways. And he didn't say any words. And she said, oh, that sounds like you might be having a tough day. So I'm going to follow up with you later. Okay. And he just nodded. And he just nodded. And so there she was in her landscape with me, walking me through a tour of the school, but she didn't miss a second connecting with that boy and recognizing he might need a conversation.
Well, and I think that these moments, these times, hallways, assemblies, lunch, they're such a good opportunity to do a couple of other things. Believe it or not, jam-packed hallways were when I love to give informal positive feedback for teachers. I've talked about this before. I would say, thank you for always being present in the hallway, or wow, you're doing a great job helping control this mass amount of people, or thank you so much for always being Johnny on the spot when we need you. Just those quick sentences to connect with teachers. And I feel like those moments are such a chance to give authentic, uplifting feedback and to lift the energy in the room just by being glad to be there. I remember one moment I spoke with a teacher who was in the hallway and he was always mad. He seemed like he was always mad because he wanted more structure to how students were released and dismissed. And I decided to try and change his mind. And so I would go up to him and I'd say, listen, I know you hate that this is chaos, but I really appreciate you still being part of it. And over time, he began to joke with me about the times of chaos. And he said to me, you're right. I hate chaos, but I recognize that that's what it has to be when we let 800 people walk out of 5 different, only 5 doors. It is chaos. I'm trying to embrace it. And so they can be opportunities for you to connect even with people who don't love that moment or that setting or that environment.
Support for Principal Matters comes from DigiCoach and its walk-through tool. When Kathleen Beckham was a district director. She would walk through classrooms and see teachers engaging students in learning or observe elements missing in their instruction. And her biggest challenge was finding the time to give those teachers meaningful and helpful feedback that they would value as coaching and not correction. In the past, Kathleen spent hours in follow-up email exchanges after informal walkthroughs, but that all changed when she discovered DigiCoach. She now has a tool that can help her send immediate feedback from her phone or her tablet. DigiCoach is a fully customizable tool created by school leaders for school leaders to not only collect walkthrough data, but also ensure every teacher receives ongoing support, feedback, and coaching. It features thousands of pre-written, research-based commendations and coaching tips that can be included along with your own observation comments in a follow-up email, ensuring all teachers receive effective and timely support. Are you ready to make the most of your walkthroughs with a tool that saves you time and enhances meaningful feedback to your teachers? Go to digicoach.com to learn more, and please tell them Principal Matters recommended you check them out. That's digicoach.com. Support for Principal Matters is sponsored by Aptigee. Aptigee powers the identity of thousands of school districts across the U.S. They help superintendents market their district brand, and now Aptigee has rolled out Rooms, which is a powerful tool for principals and teachers to better engage families. Rooms is a two-way communication and messaging tool integrated directly with your school app. Rooms has parent-teacher messaging, translations, classroom announcements, and even PBIS behavioral tools. When you visit aptigee.com/rooms, you'll see how they make it incredibly easy for you to improve family engagement within your school. Chat with Aptigee and book a time to learn how they can help you onboard families and provide ongoing training for teachers with Rooms. Learn more at aptigee.com/rooms and tell them you heard about it first from Principal Matters. I'm going to tell another story, Jen.
Will, you're on fire. It's like Will's
you
story
just
hour. I
remind me
love
of
it.
so many things. So I'm going to just give a shout out to one of my former principals. Her name is Donna Brogan. She's retired, and she was a mentor of mine for so many years. And as a young AP, I remember watching her the first time I was at the school where we worked together, watching her work with high school seniors preparing for graduation ceremony. And it was the most unorthodox setting I had ever been in, because instead of just, like I've seen in a lot of settings, administrators or teachers militantly giving kids orders of everything that's going to happen for you to make this successful, before she went down the protocols, believe it or not, she set the norms. She actually got the mic out and she said to them, I have an agenda for what we're going to be doing today. But before we go through that agenda, is there anything that I want to make sure I'm hearing from you that you want to make sure is included as a part of this experience in graduation? And kids started raising their hands and suggesting things or asking for things. And some of which she knew would not work within the agenda. Others of which she was like, that's a really good idea. I think it would work in this area of our schedule. So, and I remember, and I'm not going to name any names of my friends because we were fellow assistants standing in the back. And I remember standing in the back and we were critiquing this moment. We were like, oh, what is she doing? Oh my gosh, why is she, this is going to be chaos. Oh, why are we taking so long listening to these students when we could already be on schedule? And so here we are standing back there, armchair quarterbacking this moment. But what I saw happen and the outcome of that was that by the time they went through rehearsals and got to the night of graduation, those kids were like lockstep, committed, so happy to be there, so proud of the moment. And it was the first time I had ever attended a high school graduation where I can't remember a hiccup in the evening. And so that atmosphere of let's do this together with input. And again, I'm not saying that works in every setting. I've been to graduations when there's, 1,500 kids graduating. It's going to be a different conversation than when there's 600 kids graduating. But or when there's 100 kids graduating. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or 60. But what I'm saying is that she was she took time to not miss out on the importance of that moment. She took time to not miss out on what was staring her right in the face, which is this graduation is actually about these kids. So
Right,
let's hear from
right.
these kids what they want for the
It's a
graduate.
it's a beautiful story, and that brings us to another reflective point we wanted to make, which is, and this is yours, and I love it. You asked, are you pausing outside of another classroom to catch the voices of good instruction or be swept away by the chorus of singing voices or instruments? And this really spoke to me because I remember one year, I went out, and again, this was when I was an elementary principal, and I went out to recess, and I stood very, very, very still. And I just listened. I forced myself to listen. And the sounds of children jumping, laughing, dancing. I remember hearing the swipe of a jump rope on the asphalt. And I took out my phone and I recorded the sounds. And then I went back in my office and I probably got caught up with 50 things I needed to do. And then later that afternoon, I listened to it. So I was out of context, right? And I just listened to the sounds of children, the sounds of joy, the sounds of birds chirping. And I was just swept away by the privilege and the joy and the gratitude of this job. And I actually posted it on Instagram. I was much better about Instagram then. And I said, just listen. That was my caption, just listen. And I got a lot of people who said to me, wow, you forget how much sound speaks to the purpose of what you're doing. One of the other school sounds that brings me such joy as a parent, as a school leader, as a teacher, does every school bus brakes squeak? I think they do. And I, as a parent, that school bus pulls up to my house and gets my child and gets her safely to school. As a principal, 16 buses line up and those brakes squeak and then they all roar to life and they take these children home safely. It to me is one of the miracles of public education, of any education. That sound, I would encourage principals to pull out your phone, record that sound, and then listen to it later. That's what we're doing here. We're getting children, we're getting students, we're bringing them to us, and we are giving them the education and the start that they need for the rest of their lives. And those squealing brakes, it's a noise that just, it fills me. It's a mechanical, squeaky, ear piercing sound, but it just makes me happy.
Jen, my heart is so full just walking into those moments with you, but I'm going to be the administrator right now that's listening to you and me, who's in the middle of a crappy day or a hard morning, or maybe after school on the way home, and they're just like, give me a break, Will and Jen.
Right.
When am I supposed to be in these moments when I have an overwhelming number of phone calls to make, students to see, student behaviors, teacher behaviors, chronic craziness happening on social media? And so I just want to speak to those listeners right now and just tell you, yes, you have every reason in the world to be on a daily basis, and sometimes from minute to minute, overwhelmed with intense situations that sometimes no one else sees. And so choosing to be aware of all of these things that are happening around you while at the same time managing chaos and putting out challenges, it's not easy. And it doesn't just happen because Jen and I are asking you to be optimistic or to have a positive outlook. I want to be really clear, Jen, that that this mindset is framed within the reality of a hard job. But I'm afraid that if we don't recognize that when the reality of a hard job, there's also beauty happening at the same time, then we go home with only the baggage of the difficulties and not the celebrations of the beautiful.
Well, exactly. And yes, I recognize that what we're saying might bring eye rolls and people are thinking, "Oh, gross. Come on, stop it." But I argue that if you don't stop to find some joy, even if you have to scrape it out from underneath piles of dirt and worms, you have to scrape it out, because here's the thing, those nasty emails are still going to be there. Whether you enjoy a few minutes of bus brakes squealing or not, they're still going to be there. The hateful people, the complicated questions, the facilities that bring, give you a headache, that's all going to be there. And so you might as well try to find those moments of joy. And I've always been an exhausting, annoying optimist. I do know that. But I also know that I love my job and I spend a lot of time pretty happy. And I do think, I've talked before about how I have really dark times. February is always a dark time for me. March is always a dark time. I physically and emotionally respond to weather patterns. I know everybody does, but I really struggle those some certain times of year. And those are the times where if I were listening to this episode, I'd be like, oh, please. But I need the reminder too. I need to remember, keep looking, keep working for the good times. And then I rely on my people. I will say to people, I'm in my dark time. What is it that I love about this job? And then that might be a time where an assistant or a administrative assistant or a secretary might say, well, you love bus duty. You love those breaks. Ha ha ha. And bring a little bit of laughter, even almost making fun of the things that bring me down.
This is going to be a reference to which I can't cite the source, but you and I both love to read. And maybe you'll remember this quote, but I was reading a story several years ago of a Holocaust survivor and his descriptions of the brutality, the deprivation, the starvation, the inhumanity of standing outside in the cold, waiting for morning orders before they could even obtain some barely anything to eat to get them through the day. And there was in the concrete area where they were all standing as prisoners, he caught a glimpse of a flower coming up in the crack of the concrete, and he was overwhelmed with gratitude. And just by the small token of the beauty of creation in the middle of such horrible suffering. And there's been so much research done, Jen, about people who have survived really difficult situations and how their hope and their ability to be present really provides them with a mental and an emotional strength that maybe some other people were not gifted with, or maybe some other people weren't aware of, or maybe if some other people had been able to foster that same kind of awareness, might have provided them just a little bit extra support through the hard times. I've never met a school leader who's ever had to suffer in the nth degree like people who've been in those kinds of situations. But I do know that in the work that we do, and you and I work with a lot of education heroes, there is a lot of trauma you manage and crisis you manage and difficulties that you manage. And this is why leadership is so hard. If everybody could do it, everybody would be the principal.
Right.
But they're not. It takes a very unique person to answer that calling. And so that's why I wanted to go here today, Jen. And so as we're wrapping up, I just want to remind leaders, as Jen and I have tried to share glimpses with you of those things that can be so important as you're walking the land of your school, as you're looking down and looking around for the qualities, as you're looking for the patterns of things that are happening around you. It helps you to be in the moment, and it helps you to remember why you do what you do.
Right. Right. Exactly. I'm really glad that you brought this up as a topic today. I think we went pretty deep, but I also think we had some fun.
I do too. Well, Jen, I'm going to share one other memory with you as we say goodbye. So just because this is something I don't want to forget, but as Jack and I were walking back from that beautiful valley and we were stepping back into the tall grass, which is kind of the quote unquote boring area.
Right.
We stopped for a minute and we just said, let's just stand here for a little bit and just be quiet. And I want you to imagine a chorus of like nighttime insects that were transported into the day. And they're just sitting all over these prairie grasses, and there's birds flitting from like cactus to cedar branches and grasshoppers leaping across the pathways by our feet, and like these flowing grasses and yucca plants. And at one point, the wind was whipping across the stems of these grasses, and they were like folding in front of us like golden threads. Like the heads were like small wheat shimmering in the sunlight, and like the sunlight was hitting each top like little yellow dots of light on each stem. So there were like millions of dancing rhythmic surges of undulating waves in front of us. And I only remember those details because when we got back, I wrote it down because I was like, this is one of those moments I don't want to forget because it's just so beautiful.
And
so
that's
leaders,
it, right?
I just, so
yeah, that's it. That's what it is. That's what it's all about. Right.
Yeah. I'm getting emotional just describing it, but I just want to, just like Jen, you took that moment on the playground to just capture that moment. Today, leaders, whatever you're doing, take a minute to watch a room full of kids. Take a minute to step in the middle of what's going on in classrooms. Take a minute to pause at the edge of a classroom and remember that this journey that you're on is one that's hard but beautiful. And as you walk the land and you look down and you observe the patterns of your school, don't forget that what you do matters. And so,
you
Jen,
know what?
Yeah,
I'm gonna interrupt to add one more sentence and then tell someone. Just like you did for us, Will. I think this moment had such a profound effect on you, and the recess sounds had a profound. Tell someone so they can share it with you and remind you of it later. You said, well, I don't want to forget this, and so by telling it, by sharing it with the universe, you won't, and you might inspire someone else. So find those moments and then share them. Okay, well, now I'll let you close us up.
Well, Jen Schwanke, what a fun.
It was fun.
I can't believe we get to do this.
I
And
know.
Principal Matters listeners, I can't believe that you are on this journey with us. And so would you take time to reach out and let us know if your thoughts on the shows that we're hosting, questions that you may have that we could answer together, guests who you might recommend that we bring together to share with this audience. But I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. I know that listeners can stay connected with you, Jen, at jenschwanke.com and at my website at williamdparker.com. And if you're interested in any of the keynotes or the presentations or the work that Jen and I do with schools outside of our own communities, then please reach out. We'd love to connect with you. But until next time, thanks for doing what matters.
Thanks, everyone.
You can find free resources like this one at my website at williamdparker.com. Check out the services link on williamdparker.com to learn more about leadership academies, mastermind offerings, and executive coaching. If you're planning professional development for the year ahead, or you're looking for keynote presentations from any of my books, please email me at will@williamdparker.com. Thank you for learning together today, and thanks again for doing what matters.